Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Alicia Vosidlo, and I'm here with Dr. Susie Dunbo today, and we will be doing a module on transnational networks and resources for women. Dr. Susie Dunbo comes to us from Kent State University, and she conducts research on feminist organizations and social change. Welcome, Susie.
Thank you, Alicia.
So as soon as this presentation loads, we're going to go ahead and get started here. And my first question for you is if you could tell us a little bit about what feminism is.
To start off this discussion, I've included a quote from Peggy Antrobus, who is the founder of one of the transnational feminist networks. And she says, "Feminism offers the only politics which can transform our world into a more human place and deal with global issues like equality, development, and peace, because it asks the right questions about power, about the links between the personal and the political, and because it comes through race and class. Feminism implies consciousness of all the sources of oppression, race, class, and it resists them all. Feminism is a call for action." And then on the next slide, I talk a little bit more about what feminism actually entails. One of the things that students don't often realize is that there is no single feminist perspective, but there are a variety of characteristics and values that I would argue really transcend all the different kinds of feminisms. And so those are that women are considered oppressed. According to feminism, women are oppressed and disadvantaged as a group. And importantly, this oppression is rooted in social arrangements, like, for instance, the family or workplaces or different organizations or government. The idea behind most feminisms is that we need some kind of social, political, and economic changes for women to actually be empowered. But importantly, us about gender, we have to look at intersections of race, class, sexuality, ability, and disability, because, just because you have two women, they're not exactly the same. And gender isn't the only thing that informs our identity and who we are. I think where a lot of feminisms differ is in terms of what they think is the main source of oppression and then the type of change necessary. And so today we'll explore one particular version of feminism that looks at these issues on a transnational level. There are a couple of misconceptions of feminism. So one is, again, that there's no single feminist perspective, but a lot of students and individuals think that feminism means women are better than men. And it doesn't. Feminism is really about equality, and there's also the misconception that men cannot advocate feminism. And as we'll learn about when we talk about different networks, men are very involved on the ground in a lot of those initiatives.
Great. So let's talk a little bit more about this idea of transnational feminism. Can you tell me a little bit about what that is?
Sure. So transnational feminist assumptions really look at women's subordination within multiple hierarchies of power. And so by that, I mean, looking at all those different identity components, so not just gender, but looking at, how women who are also minorities or women who are from a lower socioeconomic status, how they are subordinated and how those different identity aspects inform their subordination. And so the idea behind transnational feminism is that gender troubles manifest global troubles. That is, that the broader global context and that globalization in general affects women in unequal ways throughout the world. Then another assumption is that transnational feminists try to really problematize artificial binaries of national and international, traditional and modern, because globalization has really blurred the boundaries between countries and blurred the boundaries between regions throughout the world. So it's not as simple as just looking at, national identity or something as international, but really we're talking about global flows of information and resources and people that creates a broader transnational context. And then importantly, there's the assumption that there's no authentic native when we talk about transnational feminism. So we can't just talk to a subset of women from the Middle East, for instance, and assume that their experience is representative of all women in the Middle East. So those are some of the guiding assumptions of transnational feminism.
And are there any main feminist organizing practices that are being used?
Sure. So, feminist organizing practices are typically pro-woman, political, and transformational. So, pro-woman means that they favor change to improve women's collective status, to improve their living conditions, to improve other opportunities or their self-esteem. Political means that women's status is really shaped by structural inequalities and not individual actions or circumstances. So again, it's political in the sense that we can't point to a particular man for, forcing a woman to experience inequality. We also can't just look to women at the individual level to sort of change their experiences. We really have to look at broader structures that create any unequal relations between men and women, for instance. So we have to look at things like multinational corporations or other globalization processes. And then feminist organizing is transformational. So it involves a vision of society that calls for different social, political, or economic changes.
Great. And I'm assuming that there are some main attributes behind feminist organizing. What might some of these attributes be?
So, in general, no matter what kind of feminist organization that you're talking about, typically organizational messages that are part of that organization support some kind of a feminist agenda. And again, that depends on how that organization defines feminism. Usually authority is decentralized or grounded in the collective. And so that basically means that you don't have this sort of strict hierarchy, this sort of top-down approach to things like communication and organizing, but that you have power really grounded in the collective. And more participatory, organized processes that give more members of that organization access to voice and empower them in different ways. Feminist organizing usually integrates work and private lives more so than other types of organizing. So this might be something as simple as having more flexible work schedules so that individuals can integrate their work and their private lives, but it can also be in terms of some of the issues that that particular organization is tackling, like work-life balance. It also means that traditional expertise is not the only thing that these organizations value. So traditional expertise would be things like the degree that you have or the kind of education that you have or the kind of professional experience that you have. But feminist organizations often also value that personal experience that you have or the different unique characteristics that you bring or life experiences that you bring that really transcend traditional forms of expertise. And that kind of ties into that last attribute, that life experience and professional credentials are really valued in most of these organizations.
Okay, so when we think about feminist organizing and globalization, the concept transnational feminist networks comes about. And what are TFNs, or transnational feminist networks?
So in 2005, Valentine Moghadam coined the term transnational feminist networks to articulate a type of organization and organizing practice that she saw emerging that really, extant research didn't have any way to sort of explain these processes. And so she explains that transnational feminist networks are global advocacy networks organized above the national level. So what that means is that they unite women from 3 or more countries around a common agenda. So the idea is that there's a lot of overlap in how women throughout the world experience inequality, and that isn't just restricted to a particular country, but it's transnational feminist networks really offer a way to connect women around issue and not restrict them to particular country focus. So in that way, they transcend geographical, political, and cultural borders to really draw attention to gender issues throughout the world.
Okay, and are there any examples that you may be able to share with us about some of these TFNs?
So one example that I've done a little bit of research about is the Association for Women's Rights in Development. And this is an organization that is pro-woman, that is political, and it's transformational. And so it's an international membership organization with offices located on 3 different continents. Currently, they're in Mexico, South Africa, and Canada. They have a rotating secretariat, so those offices move. They're registered in the United States as a 501c3, so they're classified as a public charity. And this particular organization offers one of the largest international forums outside of the United Nations system to really discuss how women can organize around issues and really engage in transnational feminist processes. So this organization was established in the early 80s by a group of 26 U.S. scholars, practitioners, and policymakers in sort of this wing spread meeting. And what they decided to do was to create a membership organization that would really bring together a variety of diverse backgrounds and forms of expertise. So academics, private sector people, voluntary organizations, and policymakers to try to empower women throughout the world. And so they organized their first forum in 1983. And that forum arguably put women in development on the U.S. policy agenda. We can talk a little bit more about the mission and vision of this particular organization as well. So their mission is to strengthen the voice, impact, and influence of women's rights activists, organizations, and movements internationally to effectively advance the rights of women. And they believe that women's rights are not only necessary in and of themselves, but that they are central to ending the challenges the world faces today, like eradicating poverty, building peace, effectively tackling HIV and AIDS, to name just a few. And what they argue is that there's no lasting solution to these issues without a strategy that puts women's rights at the center. And so AWID works to build a world where women's rights have been achieved and where all people enjoy their human rights. In terms of values, so we can talk a little bit about the values that they have. They build upon feminist values toward the full equality of women and human rights of all people. This includes work towards the eradication of all discriminations. So we see those intersections here based on gender, sexuality, religion, age, ability, ethnicity, language, nationality, class, or other factors. They're committed to work as part of a movement to build the collective voice and collective power and influence. They are committed to diversity and inclusion by privileging marginalized voices and perspectives. And in all their interactions, they strive for transparency, responsible use of financial resources, fairness, accountability, and integrity. They also work independently from any political party, government, or religious institution and strive for excellence. And so you can see when you think about all of their values, how this organization meets those requirements of a feminist organization to be pro-woman, transformational, and political.
Absolutely.
There's also some youth initiatives that we can reference that might be more relevant to some students. So they have a lot of job opportunities, conferences, e-learning sessions, communities, activist tools and resources, and funding information. And I would encourage people that are interested in learning more about these initiatives to visit the branch of their website that is really just targeting young women throughout the world, and that's the Young Feminist Wire.
Great. And this is just one TFN, correct? There are also other initiatives that are going on around the world?
There are. And so I've just highlighted here some of them. And these different organizations, some of them focus on particular regions throughout the world at the same time that they are uniting women beyond geographical borders. And they also some target specific issues of gender equality over others. So Dawn is one example. Women in Development in Europe is another. Women's Environment and Development Organization is another. Women Living Under Muslim Laws. There's the Sisterhood is Global Institute and the Association of Women of the Mediterranean Region. And so I would encourage students to visit each of these different websites if they wanted to learn more about these particular organizations. I can also give you a little more information if you'd like.
Well, I believe you also provided us with a handout that gives us more information about these TFNs and how to contact or use them as a resource for building upon our participants' own Leadership for Change projects. So that's a great handout that we'll also be able to provide the women and participants of this institute that they can use as a reference for building upon their own research and helping them develop strategies to bridge globally and make connections.
Yes.
So why don't we wrap up a little here, Susie? It's been such a great pleasure having you with us today and to tell us about some transnational networks and these resources, which undoubtedly will be very helpful for women as they continue on making changes in their own countries.
Yes, I'm glad I could help.
Absolutely. So I want to just thank you again for sharing your insight and remind everyone that Dr. Susie Dunbo again is at Kent State University and that her research really looks at the intersection between feminist organizations and social change. And so I want to thank you for spending this time with us and telling us more about TFNs.